On today's edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, I'll be bringing in the host of Locked On Blackhawks, Jack Bushman, to discuss the Chicago Blackhawks' surprising 3-2-0 start to the season, how their power play is going, even with Patrick Kane not getting on the scoreboard. We're going to be discussing some of the goalie injuries for the Chicago Blackhawks, and we're going to discuss with him more of the direction the Florida Panthers are in under this new coaching staff, and of course, Matthew Tkachuk in the mix. We're going to discuss that more here on the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast.
Your Locked On Panthers, your daily podcast on the Florida Panthers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to another edition of the Locked On Blackhawks and Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Just a reminder that you can get both shows on YouTube or Odyssey, whatever podcast app, wherever you get your podcast. It's 100% for free. Make sure to go and check out the shows and subscribe to show some support. I'm the host of Locked On Blackhawks, Jack Bushman, joined by the host of Locked On Florida Panthers, Armando Velez, with the Florida Panthers in town for a matchup with the Blackhawks tomorrow night, or I guess tonight for when you all will be listening to this. Thought it would be a good idea to get together with my good guy Armando, who also is going to be in Chicago here in a couple of weeks, which I'm pretty stoked for. We're actually going to the Chicago Bears Miami Dolphins football game at Soldier Field, which is something we've had in the works for the past couple of months now. So I'm definitely excited for that, Armando. Excited for this game at the United Center tonight. How you doing, buddy? How you feeling?
Thank you so much once again, man, for doing this crossover with me. What started as just doing crossovers based on both of our teams that we cover facing off 8 times just 2 seasons ago. To think that was 2 seasons ago, and now here we are facing off again, doing another crossover, meeting in person in just about 2 weeks as well, and just of course these franchises have been connected based on their trajectories as well, and also in scandals as well based on the last few years. So it's just really for us, it just feels like that when these two teams face, it's always a good time to get together and chat.
Absolutely. I completely agree. And yeah, it is kind of weird to think it's already been 2 years since the Blackhawks and the Panthers were wildly in the same division for a season, which, obviously that was due to COVID-19 and all that, but it's kind of wild to think the Blackhawks at one point were in the same division as the Florida Panthers. But here they are meeting for the first time as part of this 2022-2023 regular season. Armando, Panthers are off to a pretty good start here, 4-1-1 through their first 6 games. Before we kind of talk about how this Panthers team has fared so far this year, I wanted to ask you your thoughts all in all on the offseason. Obviously, the big move was getting Matthew Tkachuk from the Calgary Flames. Jonathan Huberdeau, though, that's what it cost them in order to get that. I wanted to ask you your thoughts on that move in particular and kind of what it means to this Florida Panthers franchise, and also talk to me about some of the other moves that Florida made in this offseason as they try to gear up for another run in the Stanley Cup playoffs and hopefully make it a little bit further this season. Did you like what the Panthers did in the offseason? What was your kind of thoughts on it as a whole, along with that move of getting Tkachuk for Huberdeau?
The fan in me was devastated to see those 2 homegrown players shipped out, but when you have a generational talent in Matthew Tkachuk at 24 years old, who you're going to sign to a contract, and also with Huberdeau's and Uyghur's contract coming up as well, and them being signed long-term, and those being older guys, it made all the sense in the world to make a trade like that, because I thought even prior to the trade that the Panthers were going to try to find a way to sign Jonathan Huberdeau. I did not think that there was no way in hell that they were going to sign Mackenzie Uyghur, especially with the cap hit that they got, because it would have exceeded the possible projection of the cap from what looks like to be as of right now, 83.5. But Gary Bettman did say that it could be even 4 million more. So even with that 4 million bump, that's still the Panthers being tied up against the cap, and that would make them their window from into like 1 to 2 years, and it will be more of a sense of urgency. And they already shifted out a lot of draft picks already, and those upcoming trade deadlines would probably be more of being super aggressive, because you don't know how these guys are going to look towards the tail end of their deals as well. So giving up a first, Mackenzie Weegar, Jonathan Huberdeau, and Cole Schwindt along with it, who had an incredible season in the AHL, and knowing that out of that, you're going to get 8 more years of Matthew Tkachuk getting 104 points at 24 years old, and leads the Panthers right now in points. He leads in shots. He leads in penalty minutes. Every single time there's a whistle, everyone wants a little piece of Matthew Tkachuk, and just he's been just everything that's been advertised. And even with the adversity that the Florida Panthers have faced early with losing Aaron Ekblad, now he's on LTIR. The earliest he'll come back is November. So there's been a little adversity for this team, and just for the Panthers, it's just really been one game at a time. And also with the experience of Paul Maurice, he's just been it's just a system that the players have bought in. There's less odd man rushes for the team, and they're not leading their goalies out to dry. And there have been also some great acquisitions. Colin White has been a great acquisition, playing on that line with Anton Lundell and Eetu Luostarinen. Eetu Luostarinen, who was a fourth liner for the last 2 years, now got bumped up to the top 9 on the left wing. That line defensively hasn't given up a goal against at all, and they've been one of the best. The second and third line have been the best line so far in this young Florida Panthers season.
So I wanted to ask you also about Paul Maurice, who you just mentioned a moment ago. Obviously, there was, I don't know if I want to say a controversy. I don't know if that would be the right word, but obviously Andrew Brunette took over after Joel Quenneville's departure early on last season. The Panthers went on to have a heck of a regular season. In the playoffs, though, they came up short and ultimately decided not to bring Andrew Brunette back. They hired Paul Maurice. What are your thoughts on Maurice through the first 6 games, and how do you think the Panthers have fared under his lead in comparison to Andrew Brunette's? I know it's a very small sample size here for Maurice, but what kind of things have you noticed that may be different for better or worse than Andrew Brunette's style from behind the bench?
And with that change, at first, when the offseason first began, I was in favor of giving Andrew Brunette another chance, to give him a full season, even though when he did take over, it was only 7 games into last season. But giving a full season, and I would have been very okay with it. But I was also okay with the hiring of Paul Maurice, a guy who has a lot of experience. I don't subscribe to the whole most regular season losses in NHL history, because how do you get there? You coach a lot of games and you gain a lot of trust based on the franchises that he's coached. Winnipeg and Carolina / Hartford has been able to trust this guy for a long time. The playoff success hasn't been there for Paul Maurice, but the big enough sample size that he's very relatable to players, and just hearing him speak to the media, he's a very easy person to listen to. It's like he's a guy who, personally, when I ask him questions and everyone else asks him questions, he's a guy that you want to listen to. So I could only imagine what the players who know him more personally, who take him to the side and actually wants to get to know them, and vice versa. It's kind of, I can only imagine what that kind of relationship and that talk is like between coach and player as well. As far as the on the ice stuff, the Panthers clog up the neutral zone pretty well with the system that Paul Maurice applies, and this is with a team that on paper is less talented from last season as well, and it's all working out, and to think that at this time last week, when Montour missed a few games and Aaron Ekblad went down against Boston last Monday, they were playing with 4 defensemen on the road as well, and they almost completed a comeback to at least get a point for the Panthers, and that's really their big dud of the season. So everything else has just been working out. They've been getting these close wins. It's not this Panthers team is not the blow teams out of the water type of Panthers team. This is a Panthers team that's gonna be in close games during the third period. Is it stressful at times? Absolutely. But if they're trying to find ways to win, and even losing some close games like they did against Tampa, those are still a little bit of learning lessons for the Panthers in order to how to get better once April, May, and June do come around.
Armando, my final question before I turn things over to you and let you ask me some things about the Chicago Blackhawks. You just referenced how under Paul Maurice it's kind of a different style, or they're in different games, close games, and they're not the team that's going to, score 6 or 7 goals and blow you out like that. Do you think that was an emphasis, maybe considering how you need to play come April, May, June? Was that, it just seems like that was just such a focus for the Panthers, was, the game is going to be a little bit different when it reaches the playoffs. You're not going to be able to have those games where you score 6 or 7 as frequently. And it felt like that was kind of the backbone of last year's Florida Panthers team, was they could score with anybody. They can outscore anybody. Do you think that was a really big focal point of trying to retool this team a little bit this year to make them more like that style?
Yeah, and that's what comes with when you're a running gun type of team that the Panthers were last season. I think they kind of looked into what happened to Tampa Bay in 2019 against Columbus and saw how they made those adjustments, and look what happened to them. They made 3 straight Stanley Cup Finals, winning 2 of them at least. So that's really, I feel like that Bill Zito does of course, these GMs are competitive as well. Bill Zito keeps tabs on his division rivals a little north of the coast. So definitely saw kind of what they did as well. Also doing it with 2 different GMs as well, with Yzerman and now Breezewall as well. So that's kind of like what Bill Zito saw, is like, okay, what does it take to actually win in the postseason? So it's great to score goals. Lots of goals are sexy, of course. People love when you score. It isn't always the attractive type of game when it's so low scoring, and then you're just on the edge of your seat trying to see who gets a goal within the last 5 minutes of the game to make the difference in the hockey game. But just as far as a sustainable product of what is going to be past just the month of October that we're in, that is one step closer to the formula that the Panthers want to be in. It's only 6 games in, only 76 games left to figure out, because their top line hasn't contributed yet, and neither has the power play really for the Panthers. I believe they're 2 of 27 right now. So it's so the Panthers are doing it without the top line and the power play contributing.
Well, Armando, thank you so much for that insight on the Florida Panthers ahead of tonight's matchup with the Chicago Blackhawks. Interesting, you referenced how the Panthers are focusing on playoff success. The Chicago Blackhawks, while they're not in a current position to do that, interestingly enough, new head coach Luke Richardson, throughout training camp in the preseason, a lot of the video sessions he was running with the team, he was having them watch the Stanley Cup Final between the Colorado Avalanche and the Tampa Bay Lightning to show them how you need to play in the most important times of the season to have success. I know the Blackhawks aren't close to being at that stage, but instilling that type of form, I think it's very telling of, what teams are trying to do. Obviously, it's a copycat league, and you try to take from the best. So I just thought it was interesting that, the Panthers, a team that are in contention, or expected to be at least, are, doing the same thing that the Chicago Blackhawks are, in a very different situation. But once again, Armando, thank you for all that insight. Coming up in just a moment, folks, stay tuned. Armando, I'm going to turn it over to him to ask me some questions on the Chicago Blackhawks and their surprising 3-2 start to the regular season. But first, real quick, I need to talk to you all about Athletic Greens and their new AG1 product, because with just 1 scoop of AG1, you'll be absorbing 75 high-quality vitamins, minerals, and probiotics, plus more to help you start off your day. The special blend of ingredients helps support your gut health, your nervous system, your immune system, energy, recovery, focus, aging. It's really an incredible product. And Athletic Greens was first created when the founder themselves experienced a ton of gut issues and ended up on a complicated supplement routine in order to recover. That used to cost them over $100 per day. But now Athletic Greens has created the optimal and an affordable nutrition routine that will cost you less than $3 per day, which is such an easy and cheap way to invest in both your health and body. Now, I'm not kidding, folks. I really do try and get my 1 scoop of AG1 every morning, whether it's before I'm doing the show or if I'm going out and golfing with some of my friends. I'm pretty competitive. I like to have that edge. Give me any advantage that you can give me, and I really do feel the difference in the morning when I take my 1 scoop of AG1. And to make it easy for all you listening out there, Athletic Greens is going to give you a free 1-year supply of immune-supporting vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase. All you got to do is go and visit athleticgreens.com/NHL network right now. Again, that is athleticgreens.com/NHL network to take ownership over your health and to pick up the ultimate daily nutritional insurance. Back on the show for segment 2, Jack Bushman here, host of Locked On Blackhawks, joined by Armando Velez, host of Locked On Florida Panthers. Turning it over to Armando now to ask me about some questions regarding the Chicago Blackhawks and kind of the surprising 3-2 start that they're off to. So, Armando, the floor is yours, my man.
Yeah, man. So it's I don't have to ask you what the Blackhawks mission is when it comes to their approach this season. Of course, the mission is rebuilding, new coach in Luke Richardson. Of course, Kyle Davidson now is the guy running the show for the Chicago Blackhawks. But 3-2-0 for the Chicago Blackhawks. Off to a great start for this Chicago Blackhawks team. The only game that I've been able to watch on TV was their opening night game against the Colorado Avalanche. I remember texting you prior to the game saying, sending prayers out your way prior to this game and this season. And for seeing, of course, Colorado coming out on fire and thinking, okay, it could be a long season for the Chicago Blackhawks as expected. And then Chicago dropping a 1-0 game against the Vegas Golden Knights. Logan Thompson looks to be a guy that could be in the running for the Calder Trophy for Vegas after a lot of their goalie issues over the offseason. But what's the pulse of the fan base? Because this team is, of course, this franchise and this fan base, most importantly, mostly the fan base I want to talk about. What is their reaction to the 3-2 start? Are they like freaking out based on saying, "Oh my God, the Blackhawks are winning too many games. They're not going to tank for Bedard properly"? Or is it a matter of this is a team that's trying to create good habits, and you don't apologize for wins? What's the pulse of the fan base there?
Yeah, I think you're seeing a little bit of everything. There are people out there who are saying they're upset that the Blackhawks are winning, or just wait until they play some more teams. The losses are coming. There are some people who say this, the rebuild's speeding up. The one thing I would say to that is, just understand we're only 5 games in. There's a long way to go. Look, it's been an awesome start, and the way I view it, I'm never going to apologize for winning or feel bad about winning, especially when you compare everything that the Blackhawks went through last year. Like, it was just a dark and gloomy season. There was no fun about it. On the ice, the team was terrible. Off the ice, they were even worse. It was just miserable. So to see these guys go out there and have fun and kind of almost play freely with nothing to lose, like, it's a little bit of a dangerous team when you're expected to be bad. You can only really surprise people, and that's kind of what the Blackhawks have done in the last few games. But I would just remind people, this is going to be a very long season, and there's probably going to be some peaks like we're going through right now, and there's also going to be some valleys. I mean, given what this Blackhawks team has, sure, they're going to have the ability, I personally think, to compete a little bit more than some people expect. I actually, when we did our Locked On NHL predictions in terms of over-under point totals, I said the Blackhawks were going over 65.5, and I didn't think they were going to be the worst team in the NHL. I just don't see this being the worst team, but I think they're undoubtedly going to be bad. There's going to be valleys at some point. I just hope the fans don't get too high in those moments, don't get too low in the valleys. Just understand what we're still doing here. It's the first year of a rebuild, a very patient, long-played rebuild where we're thinking 3, 4, 5 years down the road. Kind of what we do right now, it is what it is. So that's how I'm kind of trying to stay even-keeled, given that the Blackhawks are having a successful start to this year when a lot of people want them to be tanking for Connor Bedard. Look, they're probably going to get plenty of opportunities to do that, especially if they're trading Patrick Kane or Jonathan Taves, maybe Andreas Athanasiou and Max Domi as well. Like, this team in the second half, they have the potential to be really terrible. The losses are going to come, so have some fun when the wins are here. Enjoy them a little bit, and it's been fun so far. I give a lot of credit to Luke Richardson and what he's been able to instill here in the early going. A lot of positives from this Blackhawks team, not even just the wins. Those have kind of been added bonuses. But, yeah, I would just say there's people feeling all over the place on this topic, Armando, but I just want people to know that there are going to be brutal stretches coming, so just kind of stay mellow and ride the wave, if you will. And right now, things are good, so smile.
Yeah, so you don't apologize for winning, that's for sure. And then, of course, Kyle Davidson being as active as he has been really in the trade deadline last year. Of course, we spoke about off camera one time about the Brandon Hagel trade, about getting 2 first-round picks, and Brandon Hagel's not off to the best start with Tampa Bay, and Tampa Bay as a team in general, even though they're on a 2-game winning streak, not off to the best start. So there's a little bit of eyes, of course, looking at Tampa Bay's record for Chicago, that's for sure, getting a higher draft pick. But the drafts for Chicago, going from 0 first-round picks all the way to 3, trading with Ottawa, trading with the Islanders, trading with Toronto to take on the contract of Peter Mrazek, which I just saw that Peter Mrazek is on IR, so he won't be playing for the Chicago Blackhawks tomorrow. But the activity that Kyle Davidson has been doing, and of course, there's also I see 2 1s, 2 2s. And another trade with the Lightning based on the Tyler Johnson trade, and of course shipping out Brent Seabrook in that one. It's so much capital at their disposal, and I just think about so much as the draft is just, even if you don't hit on 1 first-round pick, you have so many opportunities at the dartboard to hit the bullseye, and just you even if it's not the top pick like a Connor Bedard, you never know what kind of franchise-changing player you just have when you just get one dart and you hit the bullseye.
Yeah, it's kind of cool right now because we're in the middle of what I believe to be the beginning of a change in the tides of the Blackhawks prospect pool. And we saw it already in the 2022 NHL draft. You mentioned we started the day with 0 first-round picks. Kyle Davidson makes a ton of moves to wind up with 3. The Blackhawks ended up drafting 11 players total in the 2022 NHL draft. And what we saw at development camps over the summer, we were also involved in the Tom Curver's prospect showcase with the Minnesota Wild. So we got a pretty good look at a lot of those guys that Kyle Davidson selected in his first draft class. And a lot of those guys look pretty good. And you referenced Tampa Bay in particular has been very generous to us, the Brandon Hagel trade, and giving us Tyler Johnson, a 2nd-round pick, basically for free just because they needed cap relief. Kyle Davidson has done a very good job of taking advantage of his situation, and I really don't have any complaints about any of the trades he's made other than not getting enough for Alex DeBrincat. I understand the trade in itself. We just didn't execute enough and get enough from the Senators in return, but he's done a really good job. Like, we already have 2 first-round picks in 2023, 2 in 2024. Patrick Kane might be available. Same with Taves. There's a lot of other guys. I referenced Domi and Athanasiou, maybe a veteran defenseman like Connor Murphy. There's opportunities for the Blackhawks to go and add even more. And I think they're, at the end of the day, come next summer, I think they're going to have 3 or 4 picks in the first round of the 2023 NHL draft, which is supposed to be one of the best first rounds that we've seen in quite some time. So I'm really excited about where this Blackhawks prospect pool is going in these next couple of seasons. We've already seen, while it is only a summer camp and development camp and all that stuff, it really feels like this first class that Kyle Davidson drafted, it feels like a couple of those guys really have the potential to make an impact at the NHL level. And if he continues to do well and draft successfully these next few years, take advantage of the Blackhawks cap situation, get as many draft assets, as much draft capital as possible. I really think in a few years down the road, the Blackhawks are going to be in a really good position with the talent that's coming up through the organization. So I'm really happy with Kyle Davidson thus far in his first year as general manager. I'm happy with Luke Richardson. I love that there's a plan set in place. It's crazy. I don't want to say I'm super mega confident that he's doing the right move, but this all feels like everything that he's done, he's pushing the right buttons, and it has me excited for what's in store in just a few years for this Blackhawks franchise once again, Armando.
It feels like kind of turning that back the clock to like the late 2000s when Taze and Kane were drafted in the top 5 as well for both of them, and then just continuing to build off that foundation. Of course, different GM, different coach at the time for the Chicago Blackhawks, but it's a thing for, if you're a fan, it's like, okay, we've seen this work before with trying to get some top picks in order to build a team. But as far as the play on the ice, there's only so much box score watching that I can do based on this Blackhawks team. Of course, they're on a 3-game winning streak, and I see that they're top 5 in the league in power play percentage at 30%, and that's without Patrick Kane scoring a single goal this season, which Patrick Kane's going to be a hot ticket come the trade deadline this season. But as far as the guy who watches all the Blackhawks games, what are they doing differently in order to get these 3 wins?
Yeah, it's been interesting because the Blackhawks certainly are not playing perfect hockey, and they obviously don't have the most talent in the league, but there are some changes or maybe just some differences, I would say, that have been noticeable under Luke Richardson. You mentioned the power play has been really good this far, and I didn't expect that after the Blackhawks scored 6 goals total in 6 preseason games, and I believe they went 1 for 27 on the man advantage in the preseason. So didn't really have high hopes that the power play was going to be clicking, but here we are. It's looked pretty good, and as you mentioned, Patrick Kane hasn't scored a goal this year, and at 5-on-5, that top line hasn't really done much. So the power play has been a huge part in the Blackhawks winning these games. The penalty kill has been very good too. Since that season opener against Colorado, I mean, they just lit us on fire, which, it's Colorado. They're going to do that from time to time. They're pretty darn good. But since that season opener, the Blackhawks penalty kill has been excellent, and they have 4 shorthanded goals in their last 3 games. They had 2 shorthanded goals all of last season. So that's been a huge boost. And also, they've just found a way to get the job done in the third period. It's very odd. Like Sunday against Seattle, after 40 minutes, they're down a goal. Transition defense looked gross, but they scored 2 goals in 13 seconds in the third to steal it. And then against Detroit, they were down 2 as well. They've erased a multi-goal lead, a deficit, I guess I should say. They've erased multi-goal deficits in all 3 of their wins during this current streak. So there's been flaws, and like I mentioned, it's not perfect hockey. There's just something about this Blackhawks team that keeps them fighting until the end. And in the third period, when they've needed their best fight, that's what we've seen. So, yeah, it's been kind of weird, but tip of the cap to the guys for competing throughout the entire 60 minutes. Tip of the cap to Luke Richardson for having them locked and loaded, backs against the wall, giving everything they got. And even in that opener against Colorado, they were down a couple goals, getting, shellacked through the first 2 periods, if we're being honest. They come out still fighting hard. They get a goal in the first couple minutes of the third to make things a little bit interesting down the stretch. So that's kind of what's led to the Blackhawks winning these 3 games. They've kept themselves competitive. It hasn't been perfect hockey, but in the third period, they've been the better team. So it's going to be a lofty test tomorrow or tonight, no doubt about it, against the Florida Panthers. But if the Blackhawks find themselves in it again in the third period, we'll see. It's going to be a fun one, Armando. I think it's probably about time we can slide on into some of our predictions here for the third and final segment of this crossover edition of Locked On Blackhawks and Locked On Panthers. Once again, just wanted to say thank you to everyone tuning in, and a reminder that you can find either show 100% for free wherever you get your podcasts. Segment 3, getting into some predictions, Armando. But before we give a final prediction, I wanted to ask you, what are 3 keys to victory in your mind for the Florida Panthers as they enter the United Center tonight?
Score first of all for the Panthers, and it's just, of course, if you score first, you have a better chance of winning. But also, get the power play going as well for this Panthers team. Like I said, 2 for 27 right now for the team right now. And of course, there's been a lot of changes as far as personnel of who's running the power play as well. Of course, Montour is out for a few games. He's the main quarterback on the power play. Ekblad has been on the left faceoff circle taking one-timers. Now he's not part of it. So it's good. It's a little bit of figuring out that the Panthers have to do as far as that. So they're gonna have to find a way to keep the power play going. And of course, the expected power play unit that you're likely going to see on Tuesday night is Barkov, Reinhart, Bennett, Kachuk, and not Hornquist and Montour. Excuse me. Hornquist has been shifted down to power play 2 now with Montour back in. So that's the expected power play unit, and it's really Montour hasn't been didn't become the quarterback on the power play until later in the preseason. That's when they were finally starting to test out whether that was going to work. So that's going to be something to work on. But also Barkov has also taken opportunities to be at near the top of the blue line as well. But I like Barkov being that shooter on the right hand side, taking one-timers from the right faceoff circle as well. So that is a very important key for the Panthers. And really for the Panthers is just continuing to just be a great forechecking team. And they've constantly been creating goals like right on the forecheck as well, pinning teams into their own zones. As far as 5-on-5 metrics for this team, still one of the best possession teams in the whole league. Corsi 4, 5-on-5, it's always over 50% for the Panthers, and just continue to get a forecheck going in the opponent zone. And the third line has been incredible mostly. I mean, Colin White has been a very great acquisition for the Panthers. He has 2 goals on the season for the Panthers now after being bought out from the Ottawa Senators and dealing with injury issues as well. So he's been an kind of an unsung hero as far as signing for the Panthers. So it's really about continuing to build off that from the first 6 games and what's gotten them to a 4-1-1 start. But how about the Blackhawks and their 3 games, 3 keys to victory?
Yeah, my first key I would say for the Blackhawks is to get off to a good start. It was bad against Detroit in the home opener on Friday. Bad again against Seattle on Sunday. They fell behind 2-0. If they could not fall behind by multiple goals early on, it would make life a whole lot easier. They don't have to have their backs against the wall in the third period. Now, that has led to success for this Blackhawks team, but it's still not a sustainable mentality. You don't want to fall behind 2-3-0 to a team like the Florida Panthers with the offensive potential that they have. May not be as run and gun as they were last year, but they still have the talent to go and put up a crooked number on you, as we say in baseball talk. So get off to a good start, I think, is a really big key for the Blackhawks. 2, I think they have to be the better team on special teams. You referenced Florida has struggled on the power play. The Blackhawks penalty kill I touched on earlier has been really good. I think if they can prevent the Panthers man advantage from taking over, that's a recipe for the Blackhawks to staying competitive in this matchup against Florida. And it would be an added bonus if the power play can continue to convert. And then last, I think, is getting Patrick Kane and that top line going. He, Max Domi, and Andreas Athanasiou really haven't done much at 5-on-5. Athanasiou has 1 goal this year. It came on a penalty shot. Max Domi's been doing some damage on the power play. Together, that trio hasn't done as much as maybe the Blackhawks' 3-2 record would lead you to believe. A lot of people would probably think Patrick Kane's leading the NHL in points or something right now. No, that actually hasn't been the case. The Blackhawks have been getting some depth scoring, particularly from their third line of Philip Kurashev, Sam Lafferty, and Jason Dickinson, another great addition by Kyle Davidson recently. They got Dickinson and a second-round pick from Vancouver in exchange for Riley Stillman, someone who you were familiar with. Still kind of seems like a tweener at this point, and the Blackhawks looked like they got a solid bottom 6 guy in Dickinson and a second-round pick. Kyle Davidson continues to do good work. If the Blackhawks can get depth scoring once again tomorrow night and Patrick Kane can find his way on the stat sheet, I think that's a recipe to success for the Chicago Blackhawks. So those are my 3 keys to victory. Armando, what do you got as your prediction on the outcome of this matchup tonight?
I think it's going to be a 4-2 win for the Florida Panthers with an empty net goal at the end for the Cats, because it's been lot of close games for the Panthers, grinded out type of wins as well, and the Blackhawks have kept games close as well, and yeah, they've come back from multiple goal leads. This has an opportunity for the Panthers to be a little bit of a trap game as well. And it's funny, when I was previewing the schedule, the trap game that I spoke about was their home opener against the Philadelphia Flyers. A little bit worried going into that one, but the Panthers just came out firing in that one. So I guess I gotta find a new trap game to discuss for the Panthers, and I guess it's a team that from the outside people are seeing that they're clearly going into a new direction, and an easy chance for the Panthers to overlook. But of course, with the experience of Paul Maurice, he's going to I'm sure he's definitely going to talk to these guys like, don't look down on these guys. Play the game that you know that you're able to. And of course, so I think they're going to come out with a 4-2 win with an empty net goal. Before I get to your prediction, with Peter Mrazek being on IR, are we expecting a start from Alex Stalock on Tuesday night versus the Panthers?
Yes, Alex Stalock is officially going to get the start tomorrow. The Blackhawks, Luke Richardson already spoke with the media today and basically gave a rundown of the lineup. So yes, Peter Mrazek is currently on IR with a groin injury. We're expected to see Stalock get the start against Florida and also on Thursday against Edmonton. Arvid Soderblom, goaltender prospect that Blackhawks fans will be familiar with. He's expected to start one of the two games in the back-to-back over the weekend. So feels like the Blackhawks are going to lean pretty heavily on Alex Stalock as long as Peter Mrazek is out. And Stalock randomly has been pretty good. And even in the preseason, I thought he looked solid. He's a little bit too aggressive in the net. Like the dude's favorite thing to do is make fans nervous, because he'll go out, he'll play the puck from crazy angles, skate back in a hurry. It's like, dude, just stay put. But Alex Stalock, to his credit, has done a pretty good job so far this year. The Blackhawks goaltender position, Peter Mrazek, Alex Stalock, they deserve a good amount of credit for this 3-2 start. There really haven't been too many flaws with the Blackhawks in net. But it's going to be a tough test for Alex Stalock tomorrow as he takes on a really good Florida Panthers offense. I'm going to go 5-3 Panthers. I do think the Blackhawks have the ability to keep this game close, but it's almost like what we saw to open up the year against Colorado or against Vegas. I just don't think the Blackhawks are on the level as the Panthers, and they obviously have different aspirations this season. And, you know, it's not really about, I mean, I'd love for the Blackhawks to compete hard with the Florida Panthers, no doubt about it, but those aren't the games where if they do wind up on the losing outcome, you're not going to be hurt about. The Blackhawks aren't expected to beat the Panthers, but if they can hang in there, I think we can kind of take that as a moral victory. I'm not a big fan of those, but in a situation like this, it does kind of make sense. So I'm going 5-3 Panthers tomorrow night. Could work out in my favor, though. I predicted the Blackhawks to lose their home opener to Detroit. They mounted a nice comeback to pick up a win, and I always love when the Blackhawks beat the Red Wings. So that one worked out pretty good in my favor, Armando. I'm not as confident it's going to be the same this time, but should be fun. I always enjoy when the Blackhawks play the Panthers, mostly due to our back and forth encounters. So just wanted to say thank you again, brother, for coming on the show, getting together to do this podcast. And I'm really stoked for our Bears game in a couple weeks. And yeah, I'm calling it a Bears game. I don't think they're going to win, but it's at Soldier Field, so it's technically a Bears game. But I haven't been to Soldier Field in years, dude. I'm super stoked to be back, super stoked to meet you in person. And as always, it's a lot of fun when we do these shows together, bro. So thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate you.
Absolutely, man, and I'm very excited for definitely this game, our meeting, and of course our next crossover when the Blackhawks and the Panthers do meet again later this season. I don't have the schedule in front of me, but of course when they do play, of course that's an opportunity to get together. But before we wrap up, tell everybody on my feed where they can follow you online.
Absolutely. Yeah, you can check out Locked On Blackhawks for free wherever you get your podcasts. If you want to check it out on social media, you can do so on Twitter and on Instagram at @O_Blackhawks. As for me, myself, you can check out my personal page at Jack Bushman 2 for basically all Chicago sports stuff. You'll get some golf in there as well. Big golf nut myself. But yeah, if you want to check out my personal page, you can find me at Jack Bushman too. Armando, for my listeners out there, if they want to tail along on some of the Florida Panthers stuff for this matchup tonight, where can they find you and your show at?
They can follow me personally on Twitter at MonoMan12. Follow the show account on Twitter at LO_FLA Panthers. You'll see me live tweeting throughout the games of the Florida Panthers. You'll see me give all my takes on all things South Florida, as the Florida Panthers are near the top of the Atlantic Division with surprising Buffalo Sabres right now at the top, along with the Boston Bruins. And of course, football takes with the Dolphins as they're in a playoff spot. The Heat at 1-2 right now, and the Marlins looking for a new manager right now. So you'll see all those type of takes from this South Florida sports fan right here.
Well, Armando, thank you again so much. And just a quick warning to all the Chicago people, be on the lookout for me and Armando in a couple weeks when we're in the city of Chicago together. Could be a deadly duo. Keep your peepers peeled. But Armando, best of luck tonight, buddy. Thanks for hopping on the show once again.
Absolutely, my friend, and see you soon. And if you like what you're hearing, please subscribe to the podcast to be notified every single time the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast jumps into your podcast feed. Make sure to subscribe to Locked On NHL and Locked On Fantasy Hockey with Flip Livingstone and Steele Roden. We'll be covering all the regular season activities around the National Hockey League. Thank you for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. And for your second listen of the day, make sure to listen to Locked On Sports Today. The biggest stories of the day, plus instant reaction, big game recaps, and the take of the day. Available on the Odyssey app, YouTube, and wherever you get podcasts. So I'm Armando Velez with Jack Bushman. And you've been listening to the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. We're your team every day.